Transition partners take mental health very seriously. We are now supporting Claro Mental Health Charity, who are local and based in Harrogate. We are working closely with Richard Kenny, who is the IT director at TechBuyer. Claro operates as a commercial workshop making goods for businesses which enable those with long-term mental health conditions to function in a voluntary real work environment. We would love it if you can join us in supporting this amazing cause and charity and donate what you can. Any amount would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much, and thanks to all our listeners.
Hi, this is the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. My name's Elly Greening.
And my name's Sandra Stewart.
On this podcast, we will be interviewing some of the UK's greatest tech leaders. We'll be discussing war stories, battle scars, and their learnings from their journeys.
Hopefully, you will pick up some great tips, learn from others' experiences, and have a good laugh along the way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. So it's the hottest day of the year so far in the UK. So it's extremely warm working from home, but we are super excited because we've got a fantastic guest on the show. So we've got Mridula Pore, the co-founder and CEO at Peppy. Mridula has spent her career driving innovations in healthcare that make it more accessible and affordable. More recently, she's led commercial teams in the pharmaceuticals and digital health industries. Prior to that, she was an engagement manager at McKinsey Co. Peppy is a VC-funded startup that's shaking up employee benefits in the UK. They provide employees with advice, support, and treatment during critical life transitions that aren't covered by standard healthcare and employee benefits, such as menopause services and postnatal services for new parents. It's a fantastic concept. I first spoke with Mridula a few weeks ago now, and I loved everything that she was about. So I cannot wait for everyone to hear her story today. Hi.
Hi, and thank you for having me, Elly.
Oh, we're so excited to have you on the show today.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I'm Sandra, not Johnny Stewart, as it's screen. Really great to have you on the show, and it was good to have a chat just before as well. And I'm sure there's going to be some great, interesting learnings for all our listeners and viewers to hear all about. So it'd be great to start with on that note, finding out more about your journey and how it all started for you, and then how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I don't know really where to begin, but I grew up in India and the UK from a medical family background, but decided I did not want to do medicine at all. So I went to do engineering, first at Cambridge, and then I was in the US and MIT. So I did my PhD there, but sort of gravitated back into healthcare, doing pharmaceutical manufacturing, and had a brilliant time there working with the regulator, several pharma companies, doing my PhD and my MBA there. And then I came back to the UK, was with McKinsey for a number of years, as Elly mentioned, and really loved healthcare so much that I've stayed within the healthcare practice the whole time, spending about half my time doing work with hospitals, regulators, sort of health strategy, and then half my time with pharma industry, doing a whole range of things, US, Germany, Switzerland, and everywhere. But the main thing I took away from my time at McKinsey was really just the financial challenges in making sure that people get the healthcare they need. It is incredibly difficult with our current setup, with the aging population, delivering healthcare through hospitals primarily. The cost, you can't make them stack up. There's no way to make that equation balance. So I kind of came out of McKinsey really feeling really passionately about making healthcare more accessible and affordable, and just knowing, and I didn't really know what it would look like, but that there's a huge growth opportunity in doing that. So I first went to Novartis Group. So I joined Sandoz, which is the generic pharma arm of Novartis. So this is drugs that have gone off patent. You know, the market opens up. It's a competitive market. Prices typically come right down, and it's fantastic. We were launching new products into the market that brought down the cost to the NHS by 90, sometimes 95, 97%. You know,
Wow.
huge cost savings. But also very commercial team, very fun industry to be in. And also launching new generic versions of things like inhalers or patches and things like that. But I knew that the real savings for healthcare come in delivering services. So that's often what costs the most for healthcare. It's the time of the doctor or the nurse or, you know, whichever the health professional it is. And digital has just got to be a part of making that more efficient and getting it to people in the right way and at the right time. Of course, having been at MIT, I was in this very entrepreneurial environment, very open to technology innovations, and I could start to see the same things happening in London around that time. This was in about 2014. You know, both the funding was coming in, there were enough people around there for that to be quite an interesting ecosystem. And for me, it felt like the right time to be jumping into that environment. So I joined another tech startup, and that's where I met Max and Evan, who are my co-founders now, and we started Peppy together in middle of 2018.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
So prior to that, you joined another startup.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to that then, and just talk a little bit more about your experiences and learnings from that startup, and then how, I know obviously understand that you met your co-founders within startup, but kind of, I guess, what conversations you had and the journey, you know, just a little bit of detail for those that are in, I guess, similar situations where they're, you know, maybe on the cusp of entering into a startup or looking in their own up. It'd be great to tell everyone a bit more.
I think the number one thing for us was, you know, the idea for the startup will evolve, and it did massively, you know, and very quickly evolve. Therefore, who you partner with and, you know, who your clients are and customers are will evolve. What doesn't change and is really important is that initial core team. So for the three of us, one of the biggest things was you know, making sure we were all on the same page. And this is why it helped that we worked together briefly before, because we had lots of conversations around what was important to us in terms of our values, what is important to us in terms of the kind of organization that we want to build, how we think about hiring people, how we think about treating the people that we hire. And being on the same page with that was, and knowing that we liked each other. You know, we're going to spend a lot of time under some pretty stressful situations where emotions are running high. You've got to like each other fundamentally. And you've got to be able to have those tough conversations. And we had quite a lot of tough conversations very early on, which actually with hindsight was probably the best thing that could happen to us as a team, because it really forced us to understand where people's red lines were. And actually one of the things that we did very early on was to agree the language that we use to disagree respectfully. Recognize when something is really important for somebody and when they're just sort of, they're pushing back, but actually there's room for, you know, we're still in discussion phase versus actually, no, I'm not, you know, this is where my red line is, which was probably one of the best things that we did. So I'd say for anybody who's thinking about, you know, a startup, there are really two aspects to that initial team. One is making sure you know and like and fundamentally trust the other people. Then, of course, there's a secondary consideration, which is actually what is the mix of skills that you need for what you're setting out to do. My only caveat on that is it might change. So, you know, you might think you're going out to build a certain type of business, but then actually what you really need, you decide that what's really core is, you know, marketing skills, which is, for example, something that none of the three of us have in our background, but you can hire those in. But you know, if you can't get the first bit right of knowing that you can work together and work successfully together, you know, it's going to be a tough road ahead.
Yeah, that's the key to it, isn't it? Is the right people right at the foundations and the start of that journey. And
I'd say also it has to be the right time in people's lives, because you can be the right people, but brought together at the wrong times in people's lives, you know, whether that's professionally or personally as well. It's not always, you can have the right person, but it's not the right time for them to be setting off to build their own business.
Fantastic. So, and how long ago was it that you set the business up again?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay, brilliant. So 2 years ago, there was 3 of you. Where are you at now? Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Well, we're about a dozen people now. We've had 2 rounds of investment. And so we have, you know, space to build the business. We started off working with some great first clients in April 2019. And now we recently announced that we've launched our menopause service into Santander UK. We'll shortly be announcing a major pharma company launch as well. So we have, you know, our existing initial clients who put their faith in us and took a real leap of faith are still, you know, some of our most treasured clients because they were with us right from the beginning. So you know, we're working with employers and going from strength to strength. Particularly right now when employers are looking at well-being with a very different lens on it. But we've also started working with some other parties, and that's been partly done by as our product has evolved, but also by the circumstances. So with the COVID lockdown, we applied for and were one of the awardees for TechForce 19, which is a UK government initiative for supporting vulnerable and isolated people during lockdown. So we're working with the NHS on how do you support vulnerable new and expectant parents during the lockdown period.
Fantastic, amazing. It must be great just to feel like you're doing something that, you know, you're making a difference, and you know, I know it's a long journey, and I'm sure there's been a lot of challenges along the way, and there'll be more to come. But it must be a great feeling to know that you're adding value and giving back to people, which is amazing. It sounds like you've got some fantastic clients already on board, and obviously more on the horizon. It'd be great. Obviously, this is a leadership podcast. It'd be really good to, obviously, over the years you've worked in consultancy, you've had leadership roles. You know, you're currently leading a business, and you know, leading a business through a period of growth. So it'd be great to tell our listeners more about your leadership style. You know, what do you think? I guess what do you think makes a good leader, and what do you think that your teams would say about you, and what have you learned along the way that others could learn from?
So I'd say my style is quite consultative style. Like, I like to bring people on board with me and make sure they're engaged in the solution. And right now we're a small team, so we have the luxury of that still being quite a quick process. You know, to quickly gauge people's opinions, get ideas on board, and we move forwards very quickly, even though we're working now remotely. But I think there is, I think regardless of the nature and the stage of the business, a few things that are important is real clarity on priorities and consistency. I think that's consistency in the overall strategic direction of the organization. I think it's great to have people who bring lots of ideas, and we are obviously a high growth startup. We need ideas all the time. However, they can be massively energy draining, and energy is the one resource which is the most valuable resource we have. We have a few people, lots of things, lots of work to be done. Where do we direct that energy is the most important decision that we can make, both as individuals and as a team. So I think that's still true, even when you're in the kind of still slightly messy, quite messy phase we're still in. You know, when ideas are coming up, the market's changing. You know, you're getting feedback always on your product. Do we take it in this direction? Do we take it in that direction? Do we cut this functionality? Do we build in this one? But still within that, trying to hold on to some of those core principles of what you're going to do and what is important and what is actually going to drive this business forward, I think is really crucial.
Amazing. I think it's great to give some tips there about how you go about things. But I think particularly it will be interesting as your careers, obviously mentioned about your consultancy experience, how you've progressed and developed, and even in your current role at Peppy and all the growth that you've had. I think we all learn a lot from project failures and things that haven't quite gone to plan. So we would love to hear like one story, war story, I guess, that really something that went terribly wrong, but actually it had the most positive impact on the way that you've progressed and changed your career and focused yourself and your leadership style, I guess. What went wrong and what did you learn?
So I think I would say what it was, but I'll describe the situation.
Okay,
basically we had an idea, and you know, we were very excited about this idea, and it was going to really trigger a lot of response. So we had one idea. Actually, I will tell you what it was. There was one example is when we launched our menopause service, and we would have phone consultations, and we knew that there is a huge amount of need for menopause support for women, and we thought, okay, well, you know, of course people are going to sign up in droves.
Yeah,
the phone consultations, you know, all we have to do is let them know it's available. And like I said, you know, so we started investing some money into marketing and so on, and it was silence.
Yeah,
absolute silence. We were on podcasts, we did, you know, live web chats, we did a whole bunch of things, and nothing. And we'd been so
tough when you know you've got such a great product as well, and you know people need it. But
exactly, and we'd done the beta testing, and the feedback had come back tremendously positive. So we knew the product was good, and it was something about consumer behavior and how people think about it. And it wasn't just enough to get people to know about it. Then you know, we found out we was spending a lot of time doing customer care and just answering queries about the service before people were willing to commit and pay. And we just decided, ultimately it was hard because it's like there's something in here, you know, we know there's something in here, but we decided that while the service is great and there is a need, that particular aspect of trying to solve the need was something that was going to be beyond our resource levels and our capabilities as a team at that time. You know, as I said, none of us are marketeers, and you know, we're not consumer behavior experts, and we didn't have the sort of funding that meant we could hire somebody in who could help us crack that problem. So that's not to say that they can still be a need, you can still have a product that works, but connecting those two, or what it takes to connect those two, can still be tricky.
Yeah, it's certainly, and actually I think on that note, we had a VP of product from Israel. Remember when Martin Sabag was saying his first startup, and he said something similar, didn't he, that he had this great product and he just assumed that everyone would just want it and buy it straight away and he'd make loads of money, and it just didn't happen. And I think we were talking about that, it was really interesting. But yeah, agreed. So did you end up having to hire in the talent in the end, or how did you
we took a different approach. We decided actually what we've realized what we were good at was the employer and the B2B sales. So we said, let's stick with that, and not, again, it's about how do you focus your time and energy and resources. We could spend our time learning about you know, consumer marketing and get it out there, and we may, you know, maybe that would have been the right thing to do, and we decided actually no, we've got something that works, we know how to do it, we could do it with the resources that we've got, let's focus on that.
And I think it's fantastic from an employee benefits perspective. Obviously, like, we constantly, our background is recruitment, so myself and Sandra are constantly looking at contracts and benefits and that clients are offering, and it's not something I've seen in anyone's benefits package, but it is something that has been brought up multiple times when we've done women in tech events, that so many females have spoke around going through menopause and not having the support from their employer, and then just not getting it. I mean, particularly I think in our industry as well, because we work in tech, there's not as many women in tech, there's not as many women in senior roles, and I think it's definitely something that people find as a challenge. To be able to offer a product that helps support like that is fantastic, and it's something that I was really impressed. I know I was really impressed when we first spoke, and hearing more about it today, what you're doing at Peppy is super cool.
Well, I have to say, I was actually embarrassed when we started looking at menopause, because I'm in my late 30s, and I just realized I knew absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
It's not really spoken about, is it?
Spoken about at all. So I sort of realized, okay, I'm in my late 30s. I've had 2 children. So I've been, I'm sort of conscious of reproductive health. I've worked in healthcare, so I kind of know what to Google. I'm not a clinician, but I have vocabulary to know what to ask for, and knew absolutely nothing about it. And it could be, the normal age range is not that far away for me. On the earlier side of that. So it's, it was really shocking to me that I didn't even know to think about it. That's sort of
as a woman
who works in healthcare, and who's been talking about babies for the last year. I didn't know anything about sort of the next stage or the next big change, the physiological change that would be around the corner for me as an individual, let alone for thinking about people. So I think I don't think there's anywhere to blame, basically, because I think it's not something that women themselves know
think about until it hits you.
Until it hits you. Exactly. And this is why actually, so a lot of the awareness and, education and information is so important, because it's not just about, my line manager doesn't have a clue or my department head doesn't have a clue. The person themselves often doesn't have a clue.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's about equipping people with that information to then go, this is what's going on. Now I know about it, and then we can, so I think, take that, there's several steps involved before we can get to the stage where it is part of an organization's DNA and it is part of your sort of leadership, general leadership DNA, to think about what might be going on in people's lives in different stages of their career.
And I think like lockdowns played a key role in us as leaders, and everyone's been a lot more conscious, haven't they? And I think I hope that most people from our podcast, I think that people have taken a lot of positives out from it and spending time with their team, and you've got more time to be able to understand everyone wants to support each other. So hopefully these are all things that we can continue to do in the future. But yeah, it's fantastic, because I know there's so many women in tech events that the topics have been brought up, and it's kind of been something that hasn't been hugely discussed, which I'd love to get you involved in the future as well, because it is so important, and it's going to hit 50% of us at one time and another, right? So I'd love to know then, you've done extremely well, you've progressed at a very young age, you've got 2 children, you're a co-founder of a successful business which is set for big things, I'm sure, at Peppy. I'd love to know what you think has helped make you successful. Is it personal characteristics? Was it something that was like bred into you from family? What is it that you think's helped make you successful? And if you've got any tips, any top tips for our listeners, would be fantastic.
I think the only personal characteristics I'd probably say is persistence. There's nothing particularly, magical else, about me, except I tend to be quite focused and persistent. But I think the real answer, to be honest, for my success is just the support I have from everyone else. I've had tremendous support from my family, my husband, my parents in particular, at quite a young age, who always pushed me to see more than what was immediately in front of me. And today, to be able to manage 2 young children and a demanding role that it can often can be all hours really, takes a lot of other people to make that happen. And so really the support of other people is vital, and I think don't underestimate that in your journey as you go along. And if anything, I found I've needed it more as I've got older than I did when I was younger.
Very humble of you to say, I think. But lovely.
Well, I couldn't do it. I mean, I literally would not have the hours in the day to do what I do today if I didn't have the support of my spouse, my extended family, and so on.
Fantastic.
So, you can be brilliant, but you just can't do it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'd be really interested to find out. So I think from our point of view, we're in we're in recruitment. I've been in recruitment for 20 years, and I've worked with a number of different clients in different industries, companies that are, just starting out on that growth, and, I guess similar situation to yourself, and quite often, and for us as well, I mean, we've been through it where there was just, there was only like 2-3 of us right at the start.
God, we had some tough times, didn't we?
First few years, it was so hard we struggled to get past like 6 to 8, didn't we? We really struggled, and then we got to like between 10 and 12, and then it was really hard getting up to that next level. And obviously in 2 years you've grown from the 3 of you to now 12. Be really interesting, not only for us, I'm sure there's lots of other people in similar situations, for our listeners, viewers, to hear more about how you've got to that, how you grew, how you attracted talent. Because obviously when you're starting out, you don't really have a brand, do you? And it's really tough to attract. You want the best, but how do you attract the best?
So I think we are very fortunate here in what we do, because we are such a mission and values driven organization that although we are not a well recognized brand yet, we're working on that, but when people hear about what we do, and we see it with clients as well, when you describe what you do and it's just clicked with that person, you can see it on their face. And we hear people's personal stories all the time. It's one of the huge privileges of doing Peppy. People open up you in a way that they wouldn't, if you're saying accounting software or whatever. And you hear really, really personal things. And whenever what we do, we attract people for whom the Peppy proposition resonates. And so because of that, we have had people coming up to us completely cold, emailing, asking for introductions through, 2 or 3 degrees of connection, saying, I'm not quite sure if you're, maybe when we're not even advertising a role, saying, look, this is what my skill set is. I'd love to get involved in some way. What can I do something that's of helpful for you? And I think one of the things that, I think it's the part of the general trend. People want to be talked to as human beings and be treated as human beings, and have acknowledgement of their life and what's been going on. And for some people, that really, really resonates strongly. And so we get a lot of people who will approach us, and that's really how we did our first early hires. And of course now we're in a position to actually advertise, go through more recruiting processes and so on. But ultimately we are looking for people who are really fired up by what we do.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think the thing with medtech is the same as edtech as well, isn't it? I think after everything that's happened with lockdown, people, so I mean some of we do quite a lot in the medtech space actually, largely for consultancies that work with the NHS or software as a service, etc. But I think it's one of those things that before we usually have the challenges of sometimes you get a bit of a shoestring budget and things like that, and it can be a little bit more challenging. But after the past 6 months and what everyone's gone through together, it's made people really, really fired up to want to be able to make a positive impact. So yeah, I think that's brilliant, and hopefully I'm sure you'll find the right team to help scale up and progress and develop, which is amazing. I'd love to hear then, like you've mentioned then about how you've got your support network, which is really helps you. You're an extremely busy lady. I'd love to know how you look after yourself and how do you manage the stress of it all. A lot of leaders do struggle. So I'd love to know what keeps you sane and healthy.
Yeah. So I have 2 young children. So I have enforced breaks. I have an enforced routine because otherwise that ends up in complete chaos, the whole household. So to some degree, while they add a lot of chaos, they also force a lot of, order in our lives. You have to take a break. But otherwise, they will tell me. Yesterday, one of my children came and said, "Mummy, you've had a lot of screen time today."
Oh,
Not so good to have so much screen time just before bedtime, you know.
really?
You're right. You are right.
Ah.
Laptop.
I've got a little boy, and he started reception in September. So obviously he'll be going into year one, hopefully, when schools reopen. But yeah, I get that as well. Oh, mummy, you've been on your phone a lot today. You can put your phone down now.
Exactly. So they act as, you know, I guess they both act as checks and balances on me overworking. And, you know, ultimately, if they don't get their weekend time, you know, the rest of the week is not such a happy week. So it's sort of, I found it actually in that sense helps bring balance and perspective to my life as well. You know, is it that important that, you know, whatever this administrative task that I've, you know, haven't got round to doing till Friday late afternoon gets done, or can it wait till next week? You know.
And as you like mature as well, you learn, don't you? Grow a bit more perspective. Like I'm sure back in the days when you were like a McKinsey Co, you were probably working some crazy.
Done. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to get the stuff done at the time. That's great when you're at that space of your career, but obviously now you've got two really important jobs, right? You're a mum first, and then co-founder second.
You have to, you know, decide what, and I think you also realize, look, you know, there's no way you can do everything. So you just have to pick what you're going to do, and then live with the rest, or you know, either you find somebody else to manage it, or you know, you manage it as a team. But even as a team, we're at a stage now where the growth is so fast, where, you know, some stuff, it's either it's not going to be as good as we would like it to be in an ideal world, or, you know, some stuff is going to get dropped, and you just have to make your peace with that.
You just got to prioritize, haven't you, and work out what absolutely needs doing, and what can wait, or just get pushed to the bottom of the list, I guess.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, you can only ever do your best, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, you kind of make peace with that, and that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Not even that is good.
I'd be really interested to find out if there are any books or training courses or anything like or other podcasts, anything like that you would recommend for leadership, for startups, growing businesses, managing teams, anything like that you've recently invested time into that might be useful for our listeners and viewers. I imagine it's probably difficult for you to pick up a book.
Right now, it's not probably the time when I've been doing a lot of that. I mean, I guess my style's probably a little bit different in that I don't do too much like books or podcasts. I tend to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Or send a WhatsApp message to anybody who I know who might be able to help me if on whatever the issue is at hand. But I think it is, and even if it's a sort of, you know, I don't even know what I should be thinking about right now. What should I be thinking about right now? Type of conversation, which I've had with a few people at their various points. So I'm not sure I can be very helpful on.
I think it's important as well, though, that sometimes it's people's different styles, right? Some people love reading books, and sometimes we ask someone for one good book and they can't, like 6, and I'm like, wow, I don't know how people love it, don't they? But some people, like you say, if you've got people that you can rely on and support in your network that you can ask for advice or mentors, then that's fantastic. Equally,
I'm similar. I learn through asking other people. You know, or if I've got a problem, or I need a solution and I need help, and maybe it's something I've not dealt with before, or I just want to get a second opinion. I prefer that. I'm not really a theory type person.
Although I'm pretty sure you will have done enough books back when you were at MIT.
So you know, I do enjoy reading, but I tend to actually read much more fiction, just to switch the brain off. I will say one book though, which I think it's not particularly related, regardless of what field you're in, is quite important as a leader. The 100-Year Life by Linda Grattan, which actually talks about, we're seeing all this increased life expectancy, and how is it changing our lives, and how does it change the way we think about our careers, or how we work, whether we work at different stages, our relationships, what does life look like when 100 years is the norm versus 60? And it's very thought-provoking because it's something that affects. It's interesting to read it as an individual. It's interesting to read it as somebody who's leading other people or an organization. And from my point of view, obviously there's a third layer, which is, how does this actually affect the user needs for a service like Peppy, which deals with people going through different stages of life. But I think it's a good one to read to realize, the world is changing under our very noses, and some fundamental assumptions we have about what life should look like are fading away. So that one is definitely a recommended read, but not for any.
Times are changing, and that sounds really interesting. I was actually thinking I'm going to download that Blinkist this weekend, where it summarizes all your books really into really short pieces. So I might add that to the list, because I want to go back through all the books that we've had recommended in the podcast and just listen to them on Blinkist, because you can listen to them on all. I'm not great at spending time reading, but if I can listen to stuff on audio, and Blinkist allows you to do that as well. Yeah, so you can do like books in like 8 minutes, so it makes it really easy to be able to consume the top tips, which is super cool. So I would love to finish the podcast then on a bit of a high note about all the exciting stuff you've got planned at Peppy. Obviously your journey has had to pivot and adapt over the past year, but I'd love to know what's planned for the next 12 months. What exciting things have you got on the agenda?
So we are continuing to work with the NHS on supporting vulnerable, new and expectant parents, hopefully into the autumn, and ideally, let's see where the whole current COVID-19 crisis takes us. But if we're continuing to have lockdowns, that's putting a lot of strain on a lot of parents right now. So we want to be there to support as much as we can. Of course, we're continuing to work with all our employer clients and pipeline to develop, expand into our new sectors and work with more and more people, and develop some new services as well. So we're currently developing a service to support people on a fertility journey. Be their companion and, sort of independent source of independent information and advice as they do that. So we're planning to launch that in the autumn. And, really just, it's been a phenomenal, I know it's been a difficult time for everybody individually, but from a Peppy point of view, it's just been a phenomenal 3 or 4 months. So, looking forward to that, full steam ahead really for us for the next 12 months.
Interesting, some really exciting stuff coming out there, so it's great. Just out of interest, where did you come up with the name Peppy?
So Peppy, it basically was related to sort of that feeling of pep and living your best life with energy. So we were looking for words that sort of implied that, but were of course also easy to pronounce, especially given my first name. I'm keen on words that are easy and to pronounce and difficult to mispronounce and recognize. And what we're hearing from people is it sort of grows with them. It doesn't necessarily mean a lot to begin with, but it's also completely
punchy and I like
and positive notes, and
it's one of those words that you say with a smile on your face, isn't it?
Exactly. And so basically that's our goal for people who are using Peppy, is we want to bring sort of that smile back on your face and help you be the best you can. And for some people that will be fighting fit. For some people it will just be a better version of life, accommodating the new circumstances that they're in. But if we can bring that smile back, then we've succeeded.
Oh, amazing. It's been really great to have you on the show. Really interesting story, and I'm confident that our listeners and viewers will learn a lot, and really looking forward to seeing what's next for you guys, and being a part of that journey as well. It'd be great. Fantastic.
Yeah, I love the fact that like with Peppy, it's going to help every stage. Like as you grow, the products that you're offering are great, and that's going to be amazing. So it's so important what you guys are doing, and I love it. So keep up all the great work. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. If anyone does want to get in touch and reach out, what's the best form of contact?
you can email us on hello@peppy.health. We're also on Twitter and LinkedIn, so you can follow us there, or have a look at www.peppy.health. And do reach out. We love to chat.
Lovely. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Sandra and Elly. Thanks, guys. Cheers.